Fatal fetal abnormality is a term that we've heard a lot over the past year, and unfortunately for some it's a term that turns their world upside down. Ruby's Tuesday is the debut novel from Gillian Binchy, who recounts the emotional and physical reality of carrying a fatally ill child.
Despite being a work of fiction, this story is very real for Gillian, whose inspiration for the book came from the loss of her own child, Zeldine, and her experiences during that traumatic time. Gillian, good morning to you.
Good morning.
Gillian, we were just chatting off air there, and when I was reading your story, which was heartbreaking for me to read, so I have no idea how you survived it, but you did by writing this book. One of the phrases that you were told and is used is that your child was incompatible with life.
That's correct. That is the medical term that's used to describe a child that may survive for hours after it's born, or may die in the womb. So I suppose it is a medical term. It sounds very harsh. And
when did you first hear that term in relation to your child?
When I was 24 weeks pregnant, we went for an ultrasound into Hollis Street, who I have to say were absolutely amazing and looked after us as best they possibly could. And after the scan, we discovered that Zeldine was incompatible with life.
When that devastating piece of information is given to you, what happens then? What's the procedure?
Well, that was the first scan, and then we had to come back in for a scan the next day. So we got into the car and we drove around in circles and circles and circles, and then we came back to Hollis Street the next day and had another detailed scan where they then confirmed that Zeldine was incompatible with life.
Okay.
How do you...
We had to. So we went away for the night. You sit down and you Google words that you've never heard before in your life, and they give you an idea of a few syndromes that it may be. But obviously at that stage they don't know exactly what the syndrome is until you have the second scan. So they give you, they'll give you names of a few syndromes that it may be.
Well, that doesn't matter a damn. You've just been told your child is going to die.
I mean, they're absolutely fantastic. The problem is there's absolutely nothing that they can do for you.
Yeah, that was the thing I was going to ask you. Once they've told you that, and they've told you the syndrome and told you why the child is incompatible with life,
what are your options?
What happens then?
Yeah.
Well, I guess the reality of the situation in Ireland is there are no options. There is no option.
Well, were you expected to carry the child full term?
Well, that's what is expected in Ireland, yes.
So you would have had to give birth to a child that was stillborn or was going to die very soon after birth?
Or may have died in the womb. Could be any of the three, but the child was never going to be...
How far into the pregnancy?
We were 24 weeks at that stage, yeah, 24 weeks.
So you could have had...
Now, some amazing women, I don't know how they do it, but some amazing women in Ireland have carried their child to full term. I don't know how they do it. You're pregnant, people congratulate you. I think that's even more difficult.
Cruel. I agree with you.
So I suppose my decision, our choice, was to travel to the UK for termination for medical reasons. That was our choice.
Which you obviously can't avail of in this country.
Ireland, no.
So did having to make that journey to the UK make it even tougher? Something that is so horrifically tough as it is.
Yeah, and I guess you're in a state of shock. You need to organise everything yourself with the hospital in the UK. You need to rent a car, you need to book flights, you need to get yourself sorted.
And you need to pay for it.
Well, I guess that's the other bit that is shocking, really. You need to have €2,000 in your bank account. So, unfortunately, we're privileged enough to have that, but that not everybody has that privilege. So that then means that if you don't have that cash, you need to sit out this pregnancy.
As terrible as it is receiving that piece of information, as you were saying, you're pregnant, people know you're pregnant, having to then tell other people, how did you deal with that? I mean, or did you just isolate yourself and hide away from it all?
No, I mean, myself and Gary are very lucky. We have very supportive family and friends, very supportive work colleagues. Both of us come from very, very liberal environments, so we didn't actually have to, that wasn't a huge worry for us.
You didn't feel judged?
We didn't. However, I suppose one of the inspirations behind the book, there was lots of inspirations behind the book, but one of the inspirations behind the book was when we actually got to Liverpool, we heard all these even worse stories which is a woman that had travelled on her own and was pretending to her family that she had a miscarriage, a couple that said that they were going for a romantic week away, because they're
all Irish people hiding
just because either their families or they think that society wasn't able to cope with it or wouldn't cope with it. So in reality we were very, very privileged, and I suppose some of their heartache inspired quite a lot of the novel, and that's why in the novel Ruby's Tuesday, Afric is a single, well, she's not single, she's married, but her husband is away in China on business. So she effectively makes all the decisions herself and goes through it herself.
Quite a brave decision, Gillian, to decide to take your life and something that still affects you very deeply and put it down on the page. Was it cathartic, or was it heartbreaking, or did it help?
Well, it was a bit of everything. I suppose I've wanted to write for years and years and years, and I have been scribbling for years, and I started a novel back in 2007. I never finished it. I met Gary, then fell madly in love with him, had to then bring him from Africa back to the UK, back to Ireland, had to make him fall in love with Ireland and with me, so that all took time. So I was exhausted. Exactly. I was exhausted by 2011 when I eventually got him here and had him hooked. So then I went back to finish that novel in 2000. I went back to finish that this summer, and it just didn't feel right. And then there's actually a very real and funny scene in the book where obviously the Liverpool Women's Hospital were trying to deliver Zaldine's ashes back to Ireland, because that's the only way you can bring the box back. And this, I got a call from this fantastic DHL man who I've since tracked down, who wishes to remain anonymous.
Who brought Zaldine's ashes to you?
Yeah, to the door. And we weren't home, and he said, "Oh, I have to deliver this box." I said, "Well, you can't deliver it. We're not there to sign for it." He said, "Well, I leave it with the neighbours." I was like, "You can't leave it with the neighbours." So eventually I burst into tears and told him it was Zaldine's ashes. And he was so nice and kind and caring. Anyway, 10 days later, and myself and Gary were running out. It was a beautiful summer. Now, if you were to pick a summer to have a fatal fetal abnormality, we definitely picked the best summer, the best summer 2013. We were heading off for a run, and this gentleman in a DHL uniform approached us, and he said, "Do you know where Martello Avenue is?" I said, "Martello Avenue? I don't know where Martello Avenue is, but we live up in Summerhill," or we lived in Summerhill at that stage, Summerhill Road. I said, "It's near there, it's somewhere near there." And I recognised his voice, and he recognised my voice.
No.
And I said, Are you the man? Are you the TNT man?" He said, "I am." And I said, "I'm Gillian." I said, "And this is Gary." So after that scene happened, I said, "We must go." I said, "I must go back and write." Like, you couldn't make this up. So I put the desk at the window, and I sat down that afternoon.
Just poured out.
And I poured it out. So I started on the 24th of May, and then finished it on the 12th of September, the day before I was due to go back to work. Sent it off to Poolbeg, thought to myself, happy days, I'll never hear from anybody ever again. You know, I have a legacy for my daughter.
Was there a part of you that wished that you didn't?
Oh,
that was it?
I've done it now. Great book. Do you know, I might even self-publish it. You know, sent it off to Poolbeg, thought, there's not a chance they're going to touch this novel. And within 2 weeks, Paul Campbell from Poolbeg said to me, "Look, we're reviving an old imprint, which is Ward River Press. We have already one author. We'd like to add you to list." I was like, "Oh, jeez, I'm not sure now I really want that."
I was about to say, I
was like, "Oh, I don't know now."
One thing writing it and getting it down, but then sharing it.
Yeah, I was like, "Oh, I'm not very sure."
Something so personal.
It is, but an awful lot of it is fictional as well. So obviously, the bit about the daughter is fictional. You know,
and amazingly, you make it humorous as well.
Well, you have to, haven't you? In anything in life, you've got to try and look on the more positive,
which you clearly do,
brighter side in life. Otherwise, just life would be terribly tough.
Well, there comes a point where if you have to stop crying. And you have to start looking at the other side of it, because otherwise you'll never climb back out of that hole.
No, you're
I'm just wondering, Gillian, given the backdrop, you see, I mean, the story is remarkable, the fact that you've done it and you've come through and you're able to write about it, and it is a form of catharsis as well. But when you think of the backdrop, what's gone on in this country over the last year or two, you'd have to wonder whether there was something slightly serendipitous or karmic going on, that this was a book that actually needed to be written by somebody who had gone through it, and you got chosen. Do you have a sense of that?
I suppose I do, and Ruby's Tuesday was written during the whole, while the legislation was going through last year, the protection. So I suppose that made it even more real. So I suppose, you know, a few things. I hope it helps other women to understand what you have to go through. I mean, nobody told me at that stage, you need to find a name, you need to choose an outfit, you need to make all these decisions. You know, you don't know that. So I hope that it'll, you know, I hope that it will help other women.
What did you do with Zaldine's ashes?
We still have them. Well, we've bits were scattered all over the place. Some of us out in Dunleary because we're sea swimmers. So some of us in the back garden, and some of us in my parents' garden.
So she's everywhere. She's everywhere.
And there's some of us still at home. So
well, mind you, with a surname like Binchy,
you can't go too wrong.
Well, you'd hope that something
the expectations would be high.
Yeah, well, you'd hope that you'd have learned something.
I think you're a remarkable lady, Gillian.
Thank you.
And I look forward to reading the book.
Other thing
I'm sure any woman listening to this, and any man actually, would like to read it.
The thing to remember is that this is a novel. While it You're not on a mission here. If it helps, great, but it is a novel.
It's a novel, and it's not just to say that, okay, while the subject matter is quite dark, it actually, there's bits that are absolutely hilarious. So you'll laugh out loud, you'll cry out loud, and it is a page-turner. Anybody who has read it has said to me, and all the reviews have said, God, I read that in one sitting. My God, that is just addictive.
Well, Gillian Binchy, Ruby's Tuesday, available now. I cannot wait to read it, Gillian. It was a pleasure to meet you.
Thank you very much indeed.
Speak to
Thank
you
you,
again.
Mark. Thank you very much.